Welcome to the Hamumu Halloween Home Horror Hoedown, the podcast where we watch scary movies so you don't have to.
From award-winning to completely unknown, we take them all way too seriously.
I'm your host, Mike Hummel.
And I'm your host, Solange Hummel.
Now, warning, we use a ghoulish number of spoilers, so watch the movies first.
Second warning, we don't know anything about anything, so don't take us seriously as we take these movies seriously.
Hola, Solange.
Hola, Miguel. ¿Cómo está?
Muy bien.
Bien.
¿Y por qué hablamos en español?
¿Por qué no?
No.
No?
Porque we watched a movie today called Uno Para Morir from 2023.
In English, they call it Death's Roulette.
But in Spanish, everybody in the movie spoke.
That's how I feel when I read Spanish.
I know. This was a Mexican film, and it was also a Paramount original.
Yes. So Death's Roulette is the story of 7 individuals who wake up and find themselves trapped in a mansion, being told that they can only escape if they collectively decide one of them to die.
Obviously, we're going to spoil this movie like we always do.
Yes.
But you should be aware that as a mystery thriller, this movie is all about the secrets that get unveiled over the course of it. So if you are thinking about watching this movie, you should definitely watch it before you listen to us, because we're going to ruin all the fun surprises of the whole thing.
Yes. And just from my perspective, you should go watch it first.
Interesting.
More spoilers.
Let's begin. Rule 1, choose someone to die. Rule 2, they must agree to die. But, ironically, confused with Rule 2, Rule 3, no one may volunteer.
Right. So your agreement has to come after the vote, not before the vote. It's very, very important.
And that's why Jose is such a short-lived character in this film.
Yes. So we have an interesting collection of people in this movie. We have a family headed by businessman Esteban, who is kind of a beanbag.
Yeah. This is rich people who think everybody else is less than them.
Yes. Esteban is a beanbag, but I almost dislike Marta, his wife, even more, because she's not even a business person. Like, she, literally, there was nothing that she did. At no point was she given a job. Her entire existence was, I am married to a very important man.
I think she even did that. Like,
Mi esposa es muy importante.
Muy bien. Like, they were introducing each other, like, what do you do? Esteban's like, I'm the president of this company and I'm awesome. And Marta's like, I'm married to him.
Right? And in her mind, that was all she needed. Yeah. Which is why I disliked her so much. Like, it wasn't like she also had her own thing going on. She was just like, that makes me important because he is important. And then they have their daughter, Lupe, who is a human rights lawyer. And I thought at the beginning was going to be someone I would like.
Oh.
Turns out, no.
Interesting. In addition, we have Simone, who's a cop. Just your basic cop dude.
Yes.
Armando, the surgeon, who's more important than anybody else because he saves 60 lives a year.
Yes.
Which, interestingly, Marta disputes on the basis that her husband's company has 80,000 employees, and if they didn't have that job, they'd be dead. So really, she's saving 80,000 lives every second.
Every second. Yeah. And then we have Teresa, who is a flight attendant and an amphetamine junkie.
We later discover.
Yes. And Jose, who is very old and retired, as far like that's the only job he gives. And he is the only one from the very beginning who is super beat up.
Yeah, because he has been tortured. So in their very first little discussion, he's like, come on, guys, just pick me and I'll go with it. And of course, he is murdered for doing that because that's volunteering. And we already know that's one of the rules.
Right. So the two, like, hunter people come in and shoot him right away. And that's the point where we decided that this was, in fact, a horror movie.
It is questionable.
Because they came in and shot him in the head and we see brains on the couch.
That's the line for you.
I mean, it was the point where I was like, oh, so we get to see him being all tortured and then we see him being all murdered. And it was like, they were not shying away from showing things, which tends to be kind of a horror movie thing. And then shortly after that, there's a scene where they walk into a room and there's a bunch of clowns. And I was like, yep, this is horror.
Yeah, that's a fair reason. It's billed as a thriller on like IMDb, and it's definitely riding that line. It's thrillery, but we've seen so many movies about people waking up in a mansion and having to murder each other or similar things that were counted as horror. That like, this is fine. We can call this.
It definitely is horror enough for us to consider reviewing it. As we get closer to talking about the end of the movie, I want to revisit this conversation.
Okay.
So as these 6 now, individuals work their way through the mansion, like they're kind of given these tasks. Like in the first room, they have to figure out, there's a bunch of clues, and each clue is something that only one of them in the room would know. And they have to provide the answer, and then, it makes an acrostic, which gives them a big clue about what's going on.
Yeah, and most importantly, this causes each of them to have to spill secrets about who they are and how they're all connected to all this, because, surprise, these aren't just random strangers.
What?
They all have a reason that they're being captured here.
Yes. And the reason is the answer to the acrostic.
What is that?
Pablo Vega.
Oh my... What?
Yes. It's not Pablo
Yega,
like they originally thought, because they didn't know, because Jose was dead, they had to guess what his answer was.
Yeah. That was actually kind of cool, because they put, like, the question was...
It was like, Jose was...
blank. That was basically it.
Yes.
And they're like, well, all we know about him is he's retired, so we'll put retired, which is jubilado, apparently. And so that had a J, and that clearly didn't work. It was Pablo Vega, and they're like, oh, that's Pablo Vega. We know about him. He's a murderer.
Simone knew that.
Yeah, because he's a cop. So they were like, obviously, it's something that starts with V and is however many letters, but they didn't bother delving into it then. They're just like, we've solved this, we're done. But it kind of left that open, where if we knew better Spanish, we might have been trying to figure out what this word was.
Yes. And that definitely comes back around later in a very, like, satisfying, clever kind of way. So we find out that all of these people have connections to Pablo Vega, who is, according to Simone, he is like a really bad dude who often captures groups of people and does bad things to them.
Yeah, he's like, I forget what the examples were.
Something like a judge, and like there were other people.
He sets up these Saw games.
Yes, apparently. So we find out that they all have connections. Simone has been trying to capture him, and in the process shot his wife at some point. Yeah. That's the story that Simone tells us.
Yeah.
At least.
What? You think he's not honest?
Ooh. Teresa hits Pablo Vega's mother with a car while she is high on amphetamines. And drops her off at a hospital where Armando does surgery on her, but like a very simple surgery for fractures, but he like screws it up and punctures her esophagus and she dies.
That wasn't his story.
Well, not at first. Armando was a liar.
He was scummy.
Yeah,
for
he
sure.
was. He was. And then we have the Esteban, Marta, Lupe family. And it turns out that Marta is Pablo Vega's mother's sister.
Yeah, she's his aunt.
Yes. Which is news to Lupe, who did not know that she had an aunt or a cousin or any other living relative, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, that goes through several layers of misleading and lies before we actually understand all the parts of it. And then it goes even further than we've already told you.
Yes. Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, so they're going through, they are solving all of these little puzzles and doing different things and slowly revealing to each other and to the audience how they are connected. And it turns out they have all, like, harmed Pablo Vega in some pretty dramatic ways.
Yes, they were not great for him. So he's got a chip on his shoulder, and I guess he's going to kidnap them and force them to murder each other.
You know, like you do.
Sometimes.
Like you do.
And he does this in this elaborate, like, mansion built into the side of a cliff above the ocean on a presumably private island. And it's a big fancy building, and it just got me thinking about, you know, it doesn't just apply to this movie, but the idea of when you get those contractors out there to work on this.
I had the same thoughts.
Yes. You're like, so, you know, we need to have a steel door here that opens and can seal shut and be unopenable. And the contractors are like, but why?
Okay, even before that, I didn't even get to that point because they did that pan out shot where, you see.
Oh, yeah, it was crazy.
We're from inside the room, we go out through the window and pan out, and we see that it's just like this. It wasn't on top of the cliff. Mm-mm. It was in the cliff. So you see like a rectangle of the mansion, and the rest of the mansion is inside this cliff. And all I could think was, what did the contractors say when the owner of this house, the builder of this house, invited them out and was like, I would like to build here. And they're like, oh, on top of this cliff overlooking the sea?
That.
That's doable. And he's like, no. I would like it to be about a third of the way down this cliff, and the house is in the rock. Yeah. And the contractors are like, what now?
Yeah, I was imagining that too, like the process of building this. And I guess you could just, stay on the shore side of it and just dig with a big digger. I guess it would work, but scary and complicated. And things would like start collapsing and falling off, and yikes.
Definitely dynamite involved because there's a lot of rock in there.
Yeah.
Like you basically would have to dynamite a hole into the cliff. Like you're basically digging a cave into the cliff and then build the mansion from the inside out.
Yeah. But it did go all the way to the surface because that's where the exit was. I don't know if there was like a layer of rock or not, or if it was just all house up to the surface.
Maybe.
But then here's the contractors come to him and go, yeah, so why are you building this crazy thing? And he's explaining. He's like, yeah, I'm going to have this party. Like, you're going to use it once? Yeah, because after that, the cops are going to be swarming all over it.
Right? I don't even know.
But then, after the whole thing, all these contractors, they know about this place. And when they, they'll be like, investigated, talk to the cops and be like, hey, that's the guy who hired us.
Right. When this address shows up in the news because, there is drama happening there, that those contractors are like, dude, that's the place that had all the weird steel doors.
Yeah.
Like, what is happening in that place?
Maybe we shouldn't have built all those handcuffs into the walls. Or that big trap with a giant buzzsaw. They didn't have that, but movies like this do.
I mean, maybe we just didn't get to that room.
Yeah.
Because very early on, Marta breaks down. It's revealed that she has this sister that she sent to an asylum who got raped and had a baby and died in childbirth. And then Marta was like, I don't want that kid. Left him in the asylum. Like, all of this is revealed, and she's like, you're right, I did a bad thing, I'm terrible, it's my fault. Like, and they all vote for her, and she's like, yep, I accept. Yeah. End of movie, right?
End of movie. She's agreed, it's time for death.
And then?
Nobody deaths.
No, they get to go have a fancy dinner.
Yeah, maybe they've all been forgiven, they theorize.
Maybe. Yes. So they think perhaps that it's all over and they're going to get to go home. And then Simone is grabbing for something, a piece of turkey or something, and he pokes himself on something sharp.
Yeah.
Which Armando discovers is
a big old knife.
Big old knife.
With a handy label that says,
do it yourself.
Yeah, it's a do-it-yourself knife.
Yeah. So then immediately they go from, oh, everything's okay, we're all fine together, to once again bickering about who is going to be the one. And negotiating, because like at first Esteban is like, we have the advantage because the three of us are never going to vote for each other.
Yeah.
But the other three turn that around on him pretty quickly after the meal, because they're like, yeah, you have more to lose here than the rest of us do. You don't want to watch Lupe get murdered, so one of you is going to sacrifice yourself.
Yeah, it was complicated arguing, and he had to do a lot of logic work on it.
Yeah. One thing we haven't mentioned yet is that they had 60 minutes within which to do this. And there was about 10 minutes left when Marta agreed to the vote.
Did not volunteer.
No.
Let's be clear.
She did not volunteer. She agreed to the vote, and the timer stopped at like 10 minutes.
Everything was good, and they went and had dinner.
And then the knife came out, and the timer started again.
Oh, no timer! And then it started moving really fast. I mean, it wasn't supposed to be moving fast, but man, that 10 minutes was gone by the time they moved a couple feet away from the table.
Yeah. I think it felt that way because in comparison to the first scene where like 5 minutes had passed and it took about 15 minutes of movie time for that 5 minutes to pass.
Yeah. So Armando, of course, because he's such a great guy, is like, I'm going to go ahead and use the knife as intended and get Marta with it. And there's a struggle, and Armando gets stabbed and killed. Well, he doesn't get killed. He gets stabbed and not killed. And they're like, the timer's running out. What are we going to do? Armando, you should agree that we'll all vote for you, and you should agree to die. You're going to be dead anyway, so you just agree and we're good.
Yes.
And he's on board with that.
Subtly,
begrudgingly.
Like he gives like a subtle little like mini nod so that they know that he will agree if they vote.
Yeah.
It's all very like nuanced there.
And then they have to, the time is almost up, so they have to kill him because he's not finished bleeding out.
Yes.
And that's where it gets interesting.
Ooh, yes, because he explains to them the fastest way to kill him, which is to stab him through the esophagus into the heart, which ironically is what happened when he did surgery on Pablo Vega's mom.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think her heart was involved, but it was her getting
through the esophagus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there was that.
And the clock stops at 0 hours, 0 minutes, and 1 second.
That was not legit. They just decided to stop it then, which we found out. They did. Yeah, because it is manually operated.
Yes. So that's the first of the like very appropriate deaths, right? He dies the way that Vega's mother died. Later, after they get out of the mansion and they're trapped in the maze.
A giant hedge maze, just like The Shining.
Yes. Later, Teresa gets out of the maze and immediately gets hit by a car.
Bus.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's fun.
Right. That is how, she had hit Vega's mother with a car, so that's what she got. And then we find out later that Jose, the old guy from the beginning, was actually the doctor or whoever at the asylum who raped Pablo Vega's mother in the asylum. So he gets tortured to death. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, technically he gets shot, but he gets tortured and whatnot in retaliation for that. So there's a lot of like parallels.
Well, and then there's one more that's a very explicitly done parallel. After all is said and done, they don't kill Marta. In fact, she's the only one they don't kill. And they take her and put her in electroshock therapy.
Yes.
Because she left her sister in this asylum.
Yes.
Being tortured.
Yes. And Esteban gets shot. Not like Esteban didn't have anything to do with Vega's mother, but we find out that Esteban was doing inappropriate things to Lupe's friends and to Lupe, even though he like lies about it all the way up to the end.
Yeah.
And so he just gets shot. And there's one person that you might have noticed if you were really paying attention we have not mentioned yet.
And who is that?
Well, it turns out Simon is not who he says he is.
He's not?
He's not the cop that's been chasing Pablo Vega.
No?
No.
Is he Kaiser Soze?
Kind of. It turns out he is Pablo Vega.
What?
And he and Lupe are in a relationship, and he is
They better not be their cousins.
Oh, they definitely looked like they were in a relationship.
Yeah.
Not only is he getting revenge for the death of his mother, but he's also revenging the assault of his cousin / I don't know.
We don't know for sure. There's no proof that they're in any kind of inappropriate relationship, but it is likely.
The final scene of the movie is the two of them standing very close together, looking out the big picture window, the one window that this mansion has, because the rest of it is underground, looking out the big picture window onto a beautiful sunset over the sea, and they look awfully happily ever after to me.
Yeah. But he wanted Lupe to shoot her dad because, like, revenge.
Yes.
Because it's her revenge. She couldn't do it. She's just not evil enough.
She's pretty evil, though.
I know, but not enough.
No, she's not that evil. But she certainly wasn't the, like, oh, this is the one humane person in the movie that I thought she was going to be.
Yeah, you know who was a good person in this movie? No one.
That's true.
That's who.
I mean, there were a couple of redemptive arcs in the sense that, like, Jose right off the bat was like, yes, I'm an old man. I'm very injured, whatever. I'm going to slow you down. We're not going to be able to escape with me. Like, I volunteer. So, I mean, I don't know that that makes up for his previous crimes. Really. But there was that. And then Armando, as much as he was through the whole thing and such a liar and like very much out to protect himself, once he knew he was dying, he was like, I mean, I guess. Very begrudgingly, he was like, fine.
The visuals to this whole thing, very colorful, very crisp, artistic. It's a very, I don't know, colorful movie is what it is.
I'm glad you mentioned that because one of the things that I jotted down was that this is one of the prettiest movies that we've seen in a long time. It was, the sets were amazing. Mm-hmm. And yeah, the colors, everything, the design was just very pretty. You could tell that they had put a lot of time and effort into making it look, I don't even know the right word.
Nice.
Yeah, it was gorgeous. And there were some very interesting shots too. Like, you know, there different angles or where I made the note about it was they go into one of the rooms and at first, like, I thought we were looking in a mirror in the room that they were in.
Yeah.
And then suddenly I realized we're looking in a mirror in the room that they're going into. And it was like a weird kind of disorienting thing, but in a very artistic kind of way.
Also, there was a deer head mounted upside down.
Was there? There were a lot of like interesting little details in the backgrounds of all of the rooms. Like you could watch this movie many times over and still be noticing like, oh, there's that and that. And a lot of those things are probably clues as to what's actually going on that you just aren't aware of.
And how does Pablo have so much money to build this fancy mansion?
Yeah, I don't know.
That's a lot of money.
I don't know.
I mean, I guess all we really did here was recap the movie and barely comment otherwise, which is weird. But I don't know. I have very few notes on this movie, and I was just enjoying it. So, as a horror mystery thriller, I would award this film 4.5 body squishes out of 5. It's very entertaining and fun to go through the misdirects and tricks of the whole thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's all kind of ridiculous. Like at the end, it's like, wow, they really organized this, and it's kind of dumb in that way, but that's how these movies are. And so it's just fun to solve the puzzle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So at the end of Horror in the High Desert, Minerva, I was complaining about how it just kept turning and turning and turning, and like none of it connected to any of the rest of it, and it was very confusing.
Yeah.
This movie, Death's Roulette, also has probably one too many twists to it.
It has a lot of twists.
Like it keeps going, and like there's multiple ending points where you think the movie is ending. I mean, you don't really, but like the story is wrapping up, and then da-da, something new happens. Like, you know, oh, now we're having dinner. Oh, now we're in a maze. Oh, now we're being hunted by Pablo Vega. Like it just kept coming. Now we're on a boat. Like it was constant. Yeah. And I feel like it was maybe a little too many of those moments. But other than that, I have very few complaints about this movie. I enjoyed, even with the one too many twists, I enjoyed the twists. I thought they were fun. They were somewhat unexpected, but also you could look back and say, oh, it makes sense how that happened. Like it fits with the story.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to say is, despite the fact that after the brains on the couch and the clowns showing up, you know, the clown imagery showing up, despite the fact that that made me say, oh yes, this is horror early on, by the end, with the number of twists and the way it all was this like convoluted, bad things happened to him when he was a kid, so he created revenge and blah, 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 and it's all twisted together. It really was a thriller. It makes sense that it's billed as a thriller. It didn't have a horror movie ending. It had a thriller movie ending.
To be fair, it was a bad ending.
It was. I mean, it was? Was it? I mean,
I don't know. I mean, that's the problem when every character is terrible.
I don't know. You know, these two cousins, they're just going to make a life of it. Happy ever after sunset watching from their mansion in a cliff.
You know that's not going to work out.
No, it's not. No, it did not have a happy ending, but it also didn't have a horror movie ending. It didn't end with the world ending. It didn't end with that feeling of, oh, he's going to go do this again. It felt like there was resolution in some way that did not feel like a horror movie ending. It was much more like this thing happened. I set up this revenge plan. I got my revenge, and now I can, you know, I'm good.
Is he though?
Well, for the moment. Like, he thinks he's good in this moment. You know, someone else will do something bad to him and it'll start all over again. Like, he's not a well man.
No.
But it was much more about the mystery and about the, oh my gosh, who is this and why is he doing this to us, rather than the actual nastiness of what he was doing itself.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's a long way of saying it feels like this was billed correctly as mystery thriller.
Yeah.
And only kind of tangentially fits our horror. I mean, in the sense that we've watched a lot of movies that were equally as horror and whatever. I am going to give Death's Roulette 4 body squishes out of 5. It was a very satisfying movie. I don't think it's going to be one of the great classics. I don't think it needs to be stored in a vault somewhere so that we can still watch it after the nuclear apocalypse.
I think they should do that with all the movies. Because we're going to get bored when there's no more movies being made.
Well, but I do think that it is enjoyable. I do hope that people went and watched it before we spoiled it for them, because it was fun to watch. It was entertaining to puzzle out what happened.
Yeah, it was.
Fight the horror of a world gone mad.
So, this is the first episode that is airing after the 88th Texas legislative session comes to a conclusion, Sindai, and because of that, I am going to take a break from adding hot political tips to the end of these reviews, because I am personally taking a little bit of a break from being so deeply steeped in politics.
Until Greggy pulls you back in with a special session?
I mean, that's always a possibility.
A guarantee.
Here we are sitting on Mother's Day, by the way, which I realized is kind of an appropriate time, appropriate in quotation marks, to be watching this movie about Pablo Vega's revenge on the people who harmed his mother.
That is the theme of Mother's Day.
Yes.
Absolutely.
No, as we sit here on Mother's Day, 2.5 weeks from the end of the session, I don't know what's going to happen during the summer, because if they pass the school voucher legislation, then we might get the whole summer off. If they don't, Abbott has promised to call a special session. So anyway, long story short, I am going to take a break because everyone needs to take a break at some point.
Hot political tip.
Hot political tip. I'm going to take a break. You won't hear hot political tips for a little while. If we get a special session called, or if I get to the point where I have rested up some, or if we get to the end of summer, they will come back, because that is my goal. Like, if I haven't come back for other reasons by the end of July, I will be diving back into politics intentionally at that point.
All right.
So anyway, take a break, enjoy, have a good summer.
Well, we enjoy a hot new political movie next week. I have no idea if it's political. I don't know what we're watching.
I'm excited to find out if it is or not.
And we'll talk to you about it then. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Have a good summer.
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to the podcast.
This is the podcast.
This is what you all paid for.
You're getting exactly what you paid for it. You're getting exactly your money's worth.